Howdy, everyone. Okay, what I'd like to do real quick, like I had mentioned before in a couple other videos, content is going to be a little bit slow coming, I think, for a while going forward, just because I'm nearing the end of the build. There's not a whole lot more that I can do with the plane here at the house. My plan is to take it out to the hangar in early spring. So between now and that move, I don't have a whole lot left to do. I have a lot of little things to do. It's really nothing too exciting. It's nothing that I don't think I'm going to make any videos of, or they're going to be really short videos. Anyway, content's going to be a little bit scarce. So I figured to do a little bit of a filler, I would set up the camera on a tripod, try my new wireless microphone deal that I've only used a couple of times. I figured I'd break that out and I'd shoot a quick video, basically just demonstrating how I get this top cowling off. Mainly because the cowling is as per the plans. It's all piano hinge. There are a couple of screws underneath the bottom cowling in the back per plans, and there are some screws in here that attach the top to the bottom, again, per plans. Those screws I don't have in at the moment, but I basically just wanted to show a little bit on the hinge pin mod for the top cowling, and with a little bit of time and effort, potentially a lot of time and effort, you can get your hinge pins to work out really nice. So I'm just going to pull this top cowling off real quick. I had to pull the bottom cowling off as well. I don't know that I have the camera set up for that, but anywho. So let me walk around over here. First thing is, you can use some kind of a step stool. I don't need to take these hinge pins in and out, but if you needed to, you could stand on something. I prefer to try and do the cowling without any kind of a step stool, just because if I'm out somewhere, chances are if I get into a bind somewhere remote, I'm not going to have something to stand on. So I'd rather try to do everything from the ground level and not rely on some kind of a stool. So all I'm doing now, which you probably can't see, I mean, you can see me taking these screws out, but you can't see what I'm pulling out. All I'm doing is removing the cover plate for the little box that I had made that the hinge pins sit in. So I'm just taking these screws off and I pull this plate off. And you can see how I have the pieces parts fuel tank sealed to one another. So that's the fuel tank sealant holding these in place. And if you remember from my other videos, these drop in and hold the hinge pins, wrap around these. And this just drops in and it holds those in place, and then the screws screw into the nut plates that are in the bottom of that box. So I just pull this out as one unit. These standoffs, when they're down inside the coiled up hinge pins, they might be a little bit difficult to grab and pull out of there, just because the way that the pin wraps around it. It's not a tight wrap, but there's just not a lot of meat to grab these and pull them out. So I think this is a lot better solution, just to have it as one unit. And the screws stay in it really nice as well. So now that that's pulled out, it really is just a matter of pulling the pins out. So I spent a lot of time on this cowling getting these pins figured out. And it's at the point now where it doesn't matter the sequence of the pins. I could pull this pin out first and then this one, or I could pull this pin that connects the top to the bottom. I can pull it out first, or I can pull that one out first. The sequence of pin pulling and pin installation really doesn't matter. It doesn't make it, you know, if I pull these out first, pulling these out are going to be a lot more difficult, so I have to make sure to do it the other way. Nothing like that matters. I can pull any pin at any time in any sequence, and it doesn't make it any more difficult or any easier. But that took a lot of work. It takes a lot of work to get to that point where you can do what you want when you want without any real trouble, especially with the cowlings. So I just go ahead and pull this big pin out first and try not to drag it across my fresh paint. And then I pull this little pin out next. And I'll show these again. The curved, the wrapped end, you can see there. And of course, like I was saying, that's where this comes into play. Just like that. In general, that's how that works. And again, I have all that on the other videos. So those two pins are out. I'll go ahead and I'll pull this pin out. Again, nothing is screwed. I don't have the screws on these pins holding them in place. Pull that one out, and then I'll pull this one out. And like I said, I don't have screws in here holding these together. It's just hinge pins for now. So now that pin is out. And for me to pop off this cowling, I do have the oil door open, but I don't need it. I don't need to reach in here to do anything. My cowlings, and it just worked out this way. I didn't plan it this way, but I can just kind of push this bottom one a little bit, and it releases the hinge from the top. And then I can just pop this loose, reach in here, reach back here. This pops out. Now I can get my hand underneath it. A little wiggle. Big wiggle. There we go. And that's that. So that's the top cowling. Let me set this down. So the bottom cowling is just as easy. Actually, I guess I could pull that off. Is that going to be in camera? I guess a little bit. So I have a woodworking, what do you want to call it? It's just I'm drawing a blank. Basically just a stand, an adjustable stand that you use if you're working with long pieces of boards. You can put this stand underneath the one end to hold the board in place. I have that adjusted to help hold the bottom cowling. Obviously, this is all being done without the propeller in place. I'll make a video of that at some point. But I have the stand underneath here, so I'm just going to push this stand so that it just touches the bottom of the cowling to help support it. And then again, it's just 2 pins in the back. I've got 1 pin here. Set that aside. And then the 1 pin here. Pull it out. Set it aside. Now the cowling is free. The weather stripping here is holding the front in place, resting on the baffles, and the stand is supporting the back. So now just get underneath the cowling, support it with one hand, pull the stand out, and then the whole cowling will come right off. Move my stand, and now I can just disengage the hinges, and that's the bottom. Now I will admit putting the bottom cowling back on is a little bit of a chore because you got to get that weather stripping to sit in here correctly on both intakes, and you have to get the hinges in the back to mesh. So it's a little bit more difficult. I may film that just because when I go to put it back together, but the reason for taking the cowlings off is these pins that I just pulled off of the back of the bottom cowling, where these hold the bottom cowling to the fuselage. These are just angled right now, and I grab them here to pull them out. The problem is this is quite a decent lever, And when you go to pull on this, it feels like it kind of wants to unbend. It either wants to unbend or it wants to introduce another bend somewhere down here. It just flexes a lot. So I'm going to remake these like I had done these. I'm going to go ahead and bend them around, and then I could use this. With it being bent around a couple of times, it's very stout. And you can get a finger in there and actually pull it. Now you saw those pins actually came out pretty easy, which is great. So this is not necessarily required, but I have the material. I'm going to go ahead and make up a couple like this for those back pins and see if I like it any better. If not, I'll just keep the ones that I'm using now, but my guess is it's going to be easier to use. So I'm going to do that next. After I get them made, maybe I'll go ahead and do a little filming of putting all this back together. So let me get started on that, and I'll talk to you guys later.